Hello and welcome to Genealogy Gems podcast episode number 284. I'm Lisa Louise Cook. I first started researching my family history back when I was about 8 years old. I don't even want to tell you what year that was, but back then you had to go to the library or the archive, and quite often I would find myself writing and mailing a letter requesting a marriage record. Well, these days, so many of the marriage records can be found almost instantaneously on genealogy websites like Family Search and Ancestry. But even now, not all marriage records have been digitized. And that means that sometimes we're just not able to find them online, or we may not even be sure that a marriage record still exists for our ancestral couple. So when a search of your favorite genealogy website just doesn't bring up the records that you want, you're going to need to dig a bit deeper. So today we are going to cover 5 steps that are going to help you find marriage records wherever they are. And sometimes they aren't anywhere. Marriage records just don't exist. I have that exact situation with my great-grandparents, Charles and Ellen. They were married in San Francisco, and I had the time frame narrowed down to between 1900 and 1905. Well, as it turned out, the Great San Francisco earthquake occurred in 1906, virtually destroying the courthouse and all the records with it, including the records of my great-grandparents. So in cases like that, newspapers can be your best friend. They're a wonderful alternative record of marriages. I ran a search over at newspapers.com, and in the San Francisco Call newspaper, dated November 20th, 1902, there's a section for marriage licenses. And it says the following marriage license were issued yesterday. So that actually makes the license date November 19th, 1902. And there I find Charles A. Burkett, 25, and Ellen Lynch, 24. So while I don't have the actual marriage certificate, I've got the next best thing, which is a notice in the newspaper that they took out a marriage license. Now, that doesn't guarantee that they were married the next day. In fact, you could find a license in the newspaper and it might not mean they got married at all. But this falls right in the sweet spot of where I expected to find their marriage to have occurred. It makes a lot of sense. It sure gives me a nice, narrow time frame. So stay tuned, because newspapers.com is actually sponsoring this episode today, and we've got a special discount code for you to go check them out. And I got to tell you, they have saved me so many times finding information when the records themselves didn't exist. So stay tuned for that. But right now, let's dig in and talk about the 5 steps that are going to help you find marriage records. One of the spring cleaning tasks that we can do as family historians is to go back through the family tree that we've already built and make sure that we have vital records for everybody. So vital records, of course, are birth, marriage, and death. So today we are focusing on
marriage. Marriage is what brings us together today.
Yep, in this quick tutorial, I'm going to walk you through the 5 steps that I follow to track down marriage records for all of the different couples in my family tree. So let's get started with step number 1. Step number 1 is we need to determine the time and the place that we think the marriage would have occurred. We really need context, right? There's a good chance, if you're like me, you've got people with the same name, even within the same family tree. And so one of the ways we differentiate people is by knowing what time frame they lived in and what location they lived in. Well, that's kind of the same thing with records. In order to find records, we've really got to narrow that down and make sure that we know what that time frame and place is, and then that can help us figure out whether or not records are even available or what they are and where to find them. So for example, if you have a couple in your family tree and you need to find their marriage record, and you happen to have found them in the 1880 census, and they don't have any kids yet, so you're thinking maybe this is just after they got married, that kind of gives you a ballpark time frame. And of course, that census would also give you an approximate location. But even if it wasn't a census record, if you had some other type of lead and you knew that they were living in a particular town in a particular state, it's really important to go and find what the county was. But not just what the county is today, what the county was at the time. So one of the best tools that I love to use for this is Newberry Library's Atlas of Historical County Boundaries. And you probably know I love using this tool in Google Earth, but you can also do it right at their website. And so you can go in and pick the time frame and the location, and it will tell you what the county was at the time. Why that's so important is because that is where the records would have been stored and recorded. And so that's where we would want to be looking for them. Now, keep in mind, that's not always the case. There are some locations during certain time frames where it may have actually been that the marriages were recorded at the town level. We see that a lot of times in New England. But generally speaking, when you're working in the U.S. and you're trying to find a marriage record, determining what the county was at that time, which helps you nail down place, and then having it in a basic approximate time frame is going to go a long way to helping you find those marriage records. Now, step number 2 is we need to find out when civil marriage records first started being recorded in that particular time and place. And one of the places I like to look for those is what I call kind of genealogy guidance websites. These aren't websites loaded with records, but what they are loaded with is guidance, information about what was happening and where records are and how to find them and that type of thing. There's 2 really good ones I think that you can just bookmark and go to on a regular basis. One is the Family Search Wiki and the other is US GenWeb. So let's go take a look first at the Family Search Wiki and see how it's going to help us save a lot of time and headache searching for something that maybe doesn't exist or maybe is in a completely different place than we thought it would be. And Family Search Wiki can help us figure that out. You can get to the Family Search Wiki at familysearch.org/wiki. You can also go over to the Family Search website and log into your free account and then get there through the menu as well. When you get to the wiki, you can see it's organized by a map. We're going to click on North America, and I will scroll down and select United States. And then I've got a list of states. So let's say I'm looking for some marriage records in Ohio. We'll click Ohio. And then we need to drill down to the county. Now, the nice thing about the state page is that they have this map. But if you're not that familiar with Ohio, it could take a while to find the county you're looking for. It's a little bit easier to find it down in the alphabetical list of counties. So I'm looking for Montgomery. We click that, and you'll find typically towards the top, you'll have information about the county courthouse, how to get in touch with them. You'll also see Ohio record dates. They tend to focus on the most popular types of records that we would be looking for in genealogy. And in our case, we're looking for marriage records. So if I had an 1880 marriage that I'm looking for, I want to make sure that marriage records civilly had already started. And so it says here under marriage, 1803 is when they started in Montgomery. So I'm in good shape. I should expect to be able to find some marriage records. It also says here, though, statewide registration for births and deaths didn't start until 1908. So even if you see an earlier date in here in the box, you want to read any extra information that they're giving you in case it further clarifies this date for you. In this case, 1803 is great. Now, this is a pretty big page. A lot of information here. I find the easiest way to navigate it is I just do a Control F on my keyboard and type in marriage and do a search. Now I can jump around on this page and just find the mentions of marriage. There's a section on church records, and certainly if they did not have records back as far as I needed them, then I would want to look at the church records. As I continue to press enter on my keyboard, it scrolls through other areas of this page. Here are marriages mentioned under newspapers. But most importantly, I'm looking for vital records. And here is the section on vital records. Down here specifically on marriages. So they're now giving me links over to collections at Family Search. They might also have them for other websites like MyHeritage or Ancestry. So it just depends on what they're currently aware of as far as which collections are out there.
And typically these might be links over to digitized. Sometimes it's just a link to an archive that says, yes, we have these records, but they're not currently online. So the wiki is a huge help to save a lot of headache and be able to find out exactly when these marriage records began. And hopefully you'll find some links here to get you to places where you can locate those records.
Gosh, the Family Search Wiki is a tremendous tool. It's something that you can use for all kinds of areas of your research, not just finding marriage records. If you want to learn more about it, be sure to check out my video, How to Navigate the Family Search Wiki and Find What You Need. So that one is really digs deep into the Family Search Wiki, all the different best strategies for finding what you're looking for. And if you happen to be a Genealogy Gems Premium member, then you also have access on my website to my video, Dive Deeper on the Family Search Wiki. Yeah, there is so much to find there, and we'll help you do that over at genealogygems.com. Now, I want to make an important point here. We're talking about civil marriage records. So those are created by the government, but there are also church marriage records. And the beauty of these is they go even farther back. Amongst vital records like birth, marriage, and death, even in the civil records, those go back typically farther than any other because it's a contract. It's a marital contract. But when it comes to the church records, they go even much farther back. So even if it turns out that there are no civil records or they weren't created at the time that your ancestors lived, don't give up, because church records are going to be the place you're going to turn to. And I've got lots of great help for you on that. There's a video that we did. It's how to use church records for genealogy. And it's for all the different denominations and kind of the path that you use to track those down. So that's also available over at genealogygems.com. We'll have a link to that in the show notes. So what are show notes? Show notes is the article I've put together for you. It's all written up for you, everything we're talking about here. And I also have a worksheet for you, so you can find show notes over at my website, genealogygems.com. Now, the other genealogy guidance website that I mentioned was the US Gen Web Project. Now, this website has been around pretty much since genealogy first started hitting the internet. It's a huge volunteer program. And it's just wonderful. It's like pulling together the brain trust of genealogists over the last, 20, 30 years who have been doing research, who have inside information, who maybe live in that area. And they bring all this information together on the US Gen website and organize it by location. So that if you have a question about a particular area or records that are available, you can go and check this out. So it's structured by first in the US, you go to the state, and then you drill down to the county. And each county has its own US Gen Web project. It is all volunteer based. It's absolutely free. And there'll typically be a coordinator for that county who kind of works that web page and just puts on information as it becomes available. And many people contribute. So they'll put links to all kinds of different records. They'll also alert you to, hey, it turns out that the county courthouse burned down 50 years ago. And so those records are just not available. Or maybe they burned down, but it turned out that things got digitized before they were completely lost. So it's that inside information from oftentimes people who live there locally or have done a ton of research in that area that can help so much to direct you to the right place. Today's episode is sponsored by newspapers.com, your go-to resource for unlocking the stories of your ancestors. Dive into the newspapers where your family's history unfolds as you research nearly 1 billion pages in seconds. Newspapers.com offers an unparalleled treasure trove of historical newspapers, providing a window into the past. With papers from the 17th century all the way to today, newspapers.com is the largest online newspaper archive. It's really a gold mine for anyone seeking to uncover stories from the past. Whether you're a seasoned genealogist or you're just starting your journey, newspapers.com makes it really easy to search for obituaries, birth announcements, and the everyday stories that shaped your family. It's like having a time machine at your fingertips. And really, here's the best part. Our listeners here at Genealogy Gems get an exclusive offer. Use promo code Genealogy Gems. Altogether, no space, just Genealogy Gems for a 20% discount on your subscription. That's code Genealogy Gems at newspapers.com. So sign up today at newspapers.com and embark on a journey of discovery.
Today's episode is sponsored by MyHeritage, a global discovery platform enjoyed by 110 million people worldwide. MyHeritage has it all and offers a full-service experience that bridges your past, present, and future. MyHeritage has developed powerful genealogy tools to enrich your family tree and take your research to the next level. Receive automatic matches to family trees of fellow MyHeritage users and historical records, which provide new details that you can add to your tree. Explore 12 billion historical records to uncover fascinating new insights about your ancestors. Add new information to your family tree in one click. Check your tree for inaccuracies, colorize your black and white photos, and connect with relatives around the globe. MyHeritage makes it all possible and puts the discoveries at your fingertips. I've been colorizing some of my own personal family photos, and not only are they beautiful, but in many of the photos, it's actually been revealing more details so I can see more of my family history. Growing your family tree is easier than ever before with MyHeritage. The discoveries are out there and waiting to be made. Visit myheritage.com and try it today. That's myheritage.com. Okay, so step number 1 was to nail down that location and time frame, and step number 2 was to go check out the genealogy guidance websites like Family Search Wiki and US Gen Web to make sure that you have a good handle on what records may be available and how to get them. So that brings us to step number 3, and that is to head to some of your favorite genealogy records websites. These are websites like Family Search, which is totally free, and Ancestry and MyHeritage. So I would recommend you start with Family Search because that is totally free. And certainly the Family Search Wiki is going to point you there if it turns out that they have records that you need. And then from there, after you've exhausted the free stuff, if you happen to have a subscription to a website like Ancestry.com or MyHeritage.com, well, then that's your next stop is to go and check that out. And when you head to those websites, you might first look at your hints, see if by chance they are giving you a hint already based on what they know about your family tree as to that they already have those particular marriage records. But a lot of times, the people that we're looking for, that wasn't the case. If that had been the case, we may have already found it. So we're going to have to do a little bit more digging. But just because there wasn't a hint doesn't mean that there aren't records available. And sometimes it's just a transcription. It's just a bit of a lead to records on another location, but you might still find it at one of these big genealogy websites. One of the best ways to make sure that you've exhausted all the possibilities at your subscription website is to go check out their card catalog. That's everything that they have on their website. When it comes to hints, they don't generate hints for every record collection that they have. They actually do it for a smaller fraction of them. So going to the card catalog is just going to be making sure that if by chance it's there, but it didn't pop up already, that you can still find it. Now, if you happen to be an Ancestry subscriber, I would really recommend that you check out my video, Ancestry Top Tips and Hotkeys. In that video, we did dig in quite a bit to the card catalog. So I have a lot more suggestions for you on the best search strategies. There's little nuances to using the different elements of that search feature. And you don't want to just run a quick search and assume that there's nothing there. That's not always the case. So check out that video, and that will give you a whole lot more strategies on making sure that you've exhausted everything that's possibly available in Ancestry's card catalog. Okay, step number 4 in our 5-step process for finding marriage records is to contact the jurisdiction that originally created the records. So again, we're talking about civil marriage records. Those were created by government entities. And this is the old-fashioned way. This is the way we did it in the old days, pre-internet. Back then, you had to, generally speaking, you weren't going to be finding these records online already digitized like we do so often today. But you would have to contact the actual jurisdiction. And that sometimes is still the case. You might find an index or a transcription, something that indicates, hey, we got some information off of a record, but we're not actually showing you the record. And they'll have maybe a link or some information about what the original source was. That may be the county clerk. And so that is the person, or that is the entity that you need to get in contact with to get that record. Certainly, you can do Google searches and look up the county and the term county clerk or marriage records, and that will take you to their website. There, you're going to typically find information about how to order those records and get copies. They'll sometimes define that there's certified and there's non-certified. You don't need a certified marriage record to be able to use it for genealogy. So pay the lesser fee and get the non-certified if that's one of the options that they're offering you. And the beauty of when we use the Family Search Wiki page is that oftentimes they may already have alerted you that there is just nowhere online where these are available. And they'll oftentimes give some information about how to get in touch with the county clerk. Now, it may be outdated information, so it never hurts to go and Google it and just get the latest contact information. And you can always pick up the phone and call them and ask how you can place an order for the marriage record. Sometimes they'll let you know they don't have them anymore. And depending on how old the records are, they may have actually boxed all those up and sent them off to the state library, the state archive, sometimes even the historical society. So hopefully on the website, it's going to tell you that prior to a particular date, all of those old records were sent somewhere else, and hopefully they'll tell you where that is. If not, again, you can always pick up the phone, call them, and ask where they would have sent those earlier records. Now, hopefully these days, it's going to be pretty straightforward using these 5 steps to be able to find what you're looking for. But if it's not, if you're just not finding what you need, that does take you to my step number 5, which is to Google it. And there are a couple things that you can do to just double check across the internet. Is there anybody else who might have more information about the marriage records you're looking for? Sometimes it's just a small website that took it upon themselves to digitize or transcribe records from a particular location. That's possible. It might be that the information about where the records were sent to is outdated. They've actually moved on to some other location or archive. And the only way to really just double check that is to go out and do a web search and see if you can't find any other mentions or any other leads on this. So let's head to Google real quick and do a couple of searches just to give you an idea of how you can incorporate some of those really good Google searching strategies using search operators. So let's say that I want to find Randolph County, Indiana marriage records. First thing we're going to do is we're going to put marriage records in quotation marks. And what this does is it tells Google that this phrase has to be on the web pages that it gives back to me in my results list. Sometimes if you just do a bunch of different words, if you think they make sense, you'll end up with results where it has some of those words, maybe not some of those words, and then they're in all different orders. There's no context. We want to make sure that this exact phrase shows up in each web result. But in addition to that, I want to zero in on the time frame. Certainly, marriage records have been created for a long time in Randolph County. So I am going to put a number search. I'm going to say 1880 ... 1900. And this is technically called a num range search. And it explains to Google that each web result that it returns to me not only has to include that phrase, marriage records, but it also has to include a 4-digit number that falls within this range, which is perfect because that's going to be hopefully a year. And that will target websites that are talking about marriage records and for Randolph County, Indiana, in that particular time frame because it's going to include the year. I'm not going to put Randolph County, Indiana in quotes because we don't know if websites are going to spell out the whole phrase or just put Randolph CO or whatever. Google will understand that it's going to highly prioritize Randolph County in Indiana because it's very familiar with places. But these search terms, these keywords, and these numbers, we want to get as specific as possible. So when we press enter on our keyboard, we're going to get our results list. And of course, first of all, we see lots of sponsored items. Obviously, they're going to come from genealogy websites, but there is no guarantee that these sites actually have the records. So I'm going to scroll down. Our first regular result is from the Indiana State Library, and it does specifically mention marriage records, 1882 to 1891, and they put it in bold so it will jump out at us that this is a direct hit and matches exactly what we were looking for. Also, really good news, we see Family Search showing up second. We know that that's a free records website. So these are excellent results. And now we can come through here and look and see, wow, look, they've got the early marriages, 1819 to 1852. Now, that didn't fall directly within our time frame, but as we scroll down, we see marriage records from 1858 to 1882, from 82 to 1891. So I am in the right place, in the right ballpark. If these are not online, if these are just holdings and you'd have to be there in person, well, then that's why we want to go back and look at that second option, because we've got Family Search, Randolph County, Indiana, marriage records, and we'll see what they've got, and their catalog will help guide us there. And there are other options there as well. So here is the Family Search Wiki page. So it has directed us back to a source that we already looked at because we know the process, and it explains here when they became available and provides links directly to different collections. So Google is an excellent way to dig through the internet, go kind of beyond the big genealogy record websites if you haven't had luck there, and find these other websites, places like the Indiana State Library. In fact, if we scroll down, it also talks about the Union City Library. So this is, I know, a major city in Randolph County, and they've got items here too. So we had great success very fast using search operators. So that's our 5-step process to finding marriage records. And if you want to learn more about it, believe me, there is so much more to learn about marriage records, why people got married where they did. And if you're having trouble finding a particular record, why isn't it in the place where you thought it should be? I've got 2 really fun and interesting and informative videos for you because my friend J. Mark Lowe was my guest on 2 videos, and he's a real expert in this area. And so our first video is Marriage Records Case Study. And I just think it helps so much to see a case study all the way through because you'll get lots of ideas along the way. When you hit a brick wall or run into a challenge trying to find something, how do you get around it? That's what he tackles in that video. And we had a lot of fun putting that together. The other one is Marriage Records and Gretna Green. And if that's an unfamiliar idea to you, the Gretna Green is a place, but it's also kind of symbolic of when your ancestors got married somewhere else than you would normally expect, and they may have done it for very specific reasons. Mark gives us some great insight into this concept, and you can find that again on the show notes page. I hope you found this helpful. Go down to the comments and let me know, is there a marriage record that you've been looking for and you're just stumped? You've been through all 5 of these steps and you're still having problems. We have a great community here, and you might find that somebody else will be able to chime in and also give you some leads, or maybe they've already figured that out. And if these 5 steps helped you find a marriage record, we'd love to hear about that too. It's kind of nice to get inspired that it is possible to overcome those brick walls. Thanks so much for joining me. If you want to stay in touch with me, I hope you'll head over to my website, genealogygems.com. Click the red button that tells you to sign up for our free newsletter. The email newsletter comes out once a week, and it's really the best way to stay in touch with me and find out all the different videos and podcast episodes that we've got coming out for you. Until next time, thanks so much for listening, my friend. I'll talk to you soon.